the gap theory. Now, I do know several gap theorists who believe in an old Earth, but they do not believe in evolution. They simply believe doing a correct hermeneutic and translating the words in the Bible correctly demands a gap in the period of time. And will you read Genesis 1:1 for me?
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
And darkness was on the face of the deep. The Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light." Oh, is it?
Yes. So in Genesis 1:1, where it says, without form and void, or desolate and waste, or wild and unruly, I mean, depending on your translation, the Hebrew for this is tohu wabohu. And tohu wabohu is only used two other times in the Bible. I believe one is in Isaiah 34, and I think the other one's in Jeremiah, maybe 24. I have to double check that. But it's not used a lot, but it always is used in the context of divine justice or judgment, where God has had it and he's devastated something. And so if this is true, if we come on the scene of the earth, and this is a good question, what day did God create water? In the Genesis account.
Third day.
It seems like it, right? Because God comes on the scene and there's water. And God's hovering over this blackness. And so what these people are saying is, when it says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, that's a Hebrew idiom that means God made everything in that one act. Then, tohu wabohu, everything was laid waste, without form and void. So God creates the world, including water, because of some activity. I mean, maybe there was a pre-Adamic race. Maybe the fossils we find were like proto-humans or those Neanderthals or things. And they were violent and wicked and promiscuous, and God just said, I've had it, I'm going to destroy the world with the flood. I mean, right? That wouldn't be surprising, would it? I mean, he did it later in the Genesis account, so how do we know that was the first time God lost his temper with humanity? So the benefit of this theory is it gives you an indistinguishable amount of time between when God created everything and then when God begins the creation account of the world that we live in today. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And this could have been a half hour, or it could have been 14 billion years, or 4.5 billion years. It doesn't say. It's just, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and then there's some sort of desolation or destruction, and then the Spirit of God's hovering above the waters. And then we get the blow-by-blow account of the world in which we live. So what this theory gives you is, you can take the Bible literally, historically, and you have time to explain dinosaurs and Homo habilis and Australopithecines and a really old-looking Earth and starlight billions of years away, and all those things you need a lot of time for. And if you want to believe in evolution, you can in this period, but you don't have to. And many gap theorists believe in theistic evolution, but not all. Some simply believe doing a proper hermeneutic requires there's a gap of time between those two verses. Okay, questions, comments? Would you mind closing that door? Just next time. Questions, comments on this one? What does it do for, there's a lot of pros to this, because you can be a Christian and you don't have to feel ignorant or embarrassed. Not to name names, but I believe this is a leading theory at Point Loma and other evangelical colleges or neo-evangelical colleges. I dare say many more educated evangelicals would hold to this view. It's interesting, like I told you about that Gallup poll, people that believe in a young earth are actually the majority in America, which is so bizarre to me. It's like over 46%. And then you have something like 42% believing in theistic evolution. And then down, I know I'm butchering my stats, but it was like 15% that believed in Darwinian evolution. So make the numbers work for me. I think I got too many percentages in there.
Would you
But-
say 45, 40?
I don't know. If someone wants to Google
42, 46?
Google Gallup poll on
You
creationism.
know, you're in the
Sure, you can
ballpark.
get it.
46.
It's close. But
Yeah,
what's
close
actually
enough.
been happening, this for a long time was the leading view, but within the last 10 years, this has actually gained in percentage points, which is so weird. And you can see why people like Dawkins and Eugenie Scott would be so frustrated, because although this has made gains, it hasn't become even close to, sharing the percentage with these two views. I mean, when you combine these two views, you get close to 80% believing in over 80% believing in a God.
Right.
And then these take it to like a literal reading of the Bible, which is shocking to people that are coming from that end of the spectrum.
Right.
But this has really been taking a beating in the last few years, where people are either going to the left or the right. Because I think a lot of people are seeing this as a compromise view, that people are trying to fudge. And that could be part of the problem. And once again, you can also read, in the beginning God created as the heavens and the earth, as like the opening, like a chapter heading, like this is what we're going to talk about now. And then God talks about it. It doesn't mean he made everything at that one fell swoop. It also creates a huge problem in that you have perhaps thousands, if not millions, of years of death and tooth and claw and survival of the fittest before the fall, before sin. And at least in the Genesis account, it implies that there is no death until the fall. So that's a problem. Unless you could say, well, this is a different dispensation, this doesn't apply to 1-2 on. But I don't know, it seems really messy.
It does seem messy.
And would it have hurt God to throw in a line about, and in this time lived the pre-Adamic races, but God purged the earth? So when we found creepy stuff 6,000 years later, like giant dinosaur bones and weird half-ape, half-human looking things, we would have a heads up like, oh yeah, that must have been those pre-Adamic people we were reading about. I mean, that wouldn't have been that hard. But we don't have any of that, at least in Genesis.
46, 32, and 15.
46 believe in young earth.
And
God created humans.
God created humans.
32 believe that humans evolved with God's help.
And then,
15 believe like humans evolved without God.
awesome.
32.
46.
This is in America, by the way. If you did this in England or Europe, it would be very different. This was
32, 15.
That's still a little bit old, right?
So what are they doing, like a 3% margin of error?
46.
They're probably
well, and that's why they think America is so ignorant, because Darwinian evolution has pretty much had a free reign in American schools for the last 40 years. And the numbers aren't changing. It's really disturbing. But what you'll find is the higher educated you are, the drift goes this way. If you look at, many of these people do not have college degrees. Some of them probably barely made it through high school. And when you look at the education level of this crowd, you're looking at people in the tops of their fields, etc.
But even in their own field, they still have belief.
And I think that's...
Well, right. I agree. But they're not supposed to have belief if you're a true...
for these things.
What's that?
Nobody calls me, there's no.
Yeah, I want to be polled on these things.
Do you?
Well, never mind.
And I think that's the big difference, because if you're a chemist and you're a college student, of course you don't think you know as much as a chemist or a paleontologist or something, so you just figure they know what they're saying. So
They've dedicated their life to this.
right, exactly. So you're vulnerable. You don't know, so you just go along with it.
But as people become more educated, they
Right.
tend to move
Start to
this way.
start to move that way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Depends on who's educating them.
Well,
Institutions are getting.
no, it's just across the board, they ask people their educational level with their answer.
I thought
and-
less educated would tend to
Oh.
tend to be
Because
convinced by that because they don't.
But I mean, that goes right along with that thing from, that movie Expelled. I mean, if you wanna get your
Sure.
master's, if you want your doctorate,
Right.
you better not say
Exactly.
and you believe that stuff, and you're done, get out.
Sure. Like the day-age theory, no gap theory before 1859. And once again, that doesn't mean it's not a correct interpretation, but that bothers me personally. Do I look pain when I say that? That bothers me. That's why you guys are paying me.
Why?
Because it's just like,
It's a lot of different.
how could Jesus and the apostles and everybody miss this
Yeah.
if this was how the Bible was supposed to be read? Why did it take us needing a very old earth for all of a sudden we find this tremendous gap between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2?
But I don't think that there
Because
was-
maybe it wasn't important.
Right.
Maybe it wasn't something that we
We didn't
had to
need
know
it
in
yet.
order to
They were worried
survive
about
and thrive.
Romans.
And, I mean,
Okay,
who
fair
cares,
enough.
you know?
Sticking them up on.
All you little
For-
gap
for-
theorists,
for-
you
for-
can do that.
Well, I was
Or
gonna
for our
say
souls to be saved. So
But there are many things, though. There are many things that presently evangelical Christianity holds to that they claim that the apostles believe that are not necessarily true.
Like-
That are rooted more in a response to, or just rooted in the reformation that there are
True.
things that actually, you know what I mean, like prior to the rise of Catholic Church
Sure.
and all these things. And so, no gap theory, what do you say didn't exist till the 1800s?
19th century,
19th
yeah.
century,
Well, late,
1800s.
yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean that it isn't a viable option.
That's true.
I'm not saying that I think it makes sense, it makes enough sense to me. That's not my big
I guess I would just say it red flags it for me.
Does it?
Yes.
Do you need a hug?
No, I just,
Because I don't like to hug, so
It-
it's just, I don't know.
it doesn't invalidate it, but it makes me
Very good.
want to ask more questions about why all of a sudden
Well,
we haven't yet.
certain phrases mean different things in different parts of the scripture as well.
Right.
So just because that's what that means in Jeremiah and Isaiah doesn't mean particular. It could be
Right, it simply could be that when you're talking about something that is without any sort of structure, that's the word you use. But it's, like I said, it's only used 3 times, so it's really hard to
Decide.
be really, I think, to be dogmatic about that.
Do you, I think in terms of just kind of like this rising, could you say theistic evolution has been taking a major hit like in the past decade or so? I think part of it has to do more with like social, things that are going on in our society and a desire to feel rooted and to have something be the other. Like I know, for example, like as a young early Christian, Christian hip hop has been like on the rise a lot. Well, it's been around for a while, but it actually started to get better in the last 5 years because it really sucked for a long time. And a lot of Christian rappers actually are Reformed. They come from Reformed theology camp, and so a lot of what you're hearing are Reformed perspectives or perspectives, that kind of thing. So that's what you see. That's why.
It's possible, and yeah, there could be a lot of social or cultural reasons that this is losing ground. Maybe it's just our society is becoming more polarized, and people
I think that's
want to choose. I mean,
Yeah.
people are less willing to compromise, and they just want it black and white again.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a reaction to relativism or something. I don't know. All right, let me keep moving. This next one is called historical creationism. I'm always looking for new hermeneutics, and I was actually up at Hume Lake Christian Camps, and I found this in their bookstore. And this was written by Dr. Sailhammer. He's a college professor, theologian, and his book was called Genesis Unbound. And I thought, wow, that's a catchy title. And so I thought I needed that for my collection. And he collaged a lot of different things, and his whole premise was evangelicals and fundamentalists are picking a fight that does not need to be had. We're making a fight with scientists that we need to just hold to Jesus and the gospel and stop trying to act like Genesis is a science textbook and get in these philosophical